Hello, everybody, and welcome to What Would Your Ideal World Be? A podcast which examines very fascinating people, the topics that they care about, and most importantly, what their ideal world would be. If you like what you see here, please like, share, and subscribe. In a series of special episodes covering the Stretford and Urmston by-election, today's guest is Hazel Gibb, who is standing as an independent candidate. She previously stood as a candidate during the 2022 local elections in the Gorse Hill ward in the Trafford area of Manchester. The by-election will occur on the 15th of December. So the first question I wanted to ask you was, you've just been elected as the MP for Stretford and Urmston, and you've just entered Parliament for the first time. What is the first major policy that you seek to achieve while there, and who will you work with in order to achieve that goal?
I think the NHS is sorting out. It's been on the news today about the ambulance crews and waiting a long time for the ambulance. When the ambulance arrives at A&E, it's waiting longer than 15 minutes that it should take to get the people into A&E. So that is a big thing at the moment. And I know this might sound harsh and strange, but at the moment, I think the NHS is brilliant. Don't get me wrong, but it needs revising. And there was a former MP once said, fortunately, when it was devised, and that was before the World War II, and it was just implicated in 48, what people did not take into consideration was that the things that we would be dying with were no longer going to kill us. And therefore, we were living older and then getting different things like dementia. We need joints replacing. We didn't need this. And nobody took into the advancement of medical science that these things would be possible. So the demographics have changed. But unfortunately, the way the NHS is run is not. And that's obviously a problem. And obviously we've got people in advanced years that do want to end their life and die with dignity. And we don't allow that at the moment, although it's becoming more increasingly on the Parliament books, and a lot of MPs are in favour of it. So I think that's something we need to look at, because I mean, I was fortunate. My mum died because she had a TIA, and she says, if I go, the saying, do you want me to plug it back into the system? And I said, well, is there any point? She was struggling. She got bombed in the Second World War when she was 9. In Cheltenham on Medlock at Christmas Manchester Blitz. And she had nearly lost a leg, and she struggled. So she'd had a good 70 years that she never, nearly missed out on. And she was struggling. And I said, well, was there any point? You've asked for chloroform while you've been in there twice. You know full well what it's for. And I mean, okay, at the end of the day, we were fighting tooth and nail to keep her. But I was glad she went when she did, as opposed to ending up, well, we would nurse all, she was at home with us and she was okay in that. But, if she needed nursing, I would have done it. I used to be in St. John Ambulance as a first aider, and I would have looked after her. We looked after my gran, who did have her mum, who did have dementia and was incontinent right up to the time that when I got married, and then I was pregnant, and my dad had bowel cancer. So then it was a lot, and that was the only time that she went into care, and it was difficult, finding the time to go as well. So I think the NHS definitely needs a big review if we're going to continue with it as it is now.
Okay. One quick thing I wanted to note on your end, it seems to be like a sort of an echoey noise on your end, like just sort of like a croaky, echoey noise on your audio end. I don't know what's going on.
I don't know unless it's my hearing aids. I don't know.
Okay, I just making sure it's not, I don't want to be.
I'm not got any whistling, so it's is that better or not?
Yeah, it's a little better, yeah, I'd say. And
if you have a problem, let me know again.
okay, sure, yeah. And the next thing I wanted to ask, essentially on that line, is that why do you think the NHS needs revision as it is now, beyond the stuff you just touched on with regards to euthanasia and stuff?
Sorry, say that again.
Why do you think the NHS needs revision as it currently is, beyond the stuff that you mentioned with reform in regards to dying with dignity, as you say?
Yeah. Yeah, I think we see people having to go over to Switzerland in their to end their final days. I mean, I don't know if you've ever had a pet. It's a heartbreaking decision when you know that they've reached the end of their life and you've got to do the best thing that's for them, not for you. Although you'd love to keep them. I think it's terrible that people have to go over to Switzerland without the family.
The next thing I wanted to ask actually is that what are the main issues that have been raised so far during your campaigning, like on the doorstep and stuff?
Well, I live in near Trafford Park Railway Station, which is part of Northern Rail. I used to live about 2 minutes walk from the station, and I used to quite regularly get the train into Manchester to meet a friend and then get back for children at school. It went from every half an hour service to every hour, then every 2 hours. So it got worse. And obviously now there's not as many trains, and it only goes mainly from our stop, about half a dozen stops to where it terminates, although it's on the main Manchester to Liverpool and Warrington line, but it doesn't go. And there used to be a bus that used to go down the estate where we live on, and used to get that to the local secondary school. They built a new station near the secondary school, well, quite a few years ago. But although you can get on a train here at 8:20 in the morning, and it does stop 2 minutes later, it doesn't at 8:20 and 8:22 to stop the kids. Kids can't get on it to school. Does it at 9:20 and 9:22? And another one coming the other way, it's like you can get a train. You can't get a train at 7 o'clock from a certain station because it doesn't stop here. You have to go into Manchester and then go back again. It's just ridiculous. And this also is a main line that goes past Manchester United. And Manchester United has a halt there, which on match days, as far as I'm aware, it still runs. You can get a train at 5 o'clock back to Manchester, and you can get a train at 6 o'clock. Now, this is Manchester United. This is the biggest stadium in the country, by Wembley, but it's the biggest one that is used on a weekly basis. I used to work there, so I knew then. I've not worked there for 16 years, but I know what the amount of conferences that we had. There's no public transport close to the stadium. I mean, I'm talking about people that's got conferences who've got luggage and suitcases because they're there for a few days. We've got the metro now, but it's quite a walk away one side, and it's on the other side of Lancashire Cricket Ground on the other side. So it's actually a fair trek if you're carrying things. The only other thing is the bus, which is the nearest thing, but services have been reduced along the A56 corridor. But I can't understand why Manchester United cannot have a proper mainline station there with trains that stop during the weekday, so people are going to the stadium either to visit or conferences can use that, and work staff like myself. And though I live 2 minutes away, I had to get people to take me to work. And we say, well, it's only half an hour, you can walk it. I was a waitress. One thing you don't want to be doing is arriving to serve food in a state of disarray, and you just have a half an hour walk. And I certainly wouldn't have wanted to walk 11:30 at night when I finished my shift and it was dark, but I couldn't get a train. So I can't understand this at all. And I actually done question time about probably about 14 years ago, trying to get this point across. There really should be a proper railway station there, and we should have a proper service.
And yeah, that's very interesting given the fact that where I used to live, I used to live near Tottenham Stadium, actually, the Hotspur Stadium, and they had pretty good transport links, which makes you wonder, why do you think that they, the 40 years since you raised the matter on Question Time, there still is that problem of not having good transport links in that region of Manchester? Why do you think there's still, been sort of no
I mean,
action?
one of the problems is obviously there's houses behind the stadium on Railway Road. But if you actually go over what is now Maplesby Way, Eastbury Road, there is where the car parking is there. So I'm sure they could have built a new station there, just on the other side of the Maplesby Way, as opposed to where it is. The whole is behind the houses. That's one of the reasons the South Stand has never been extended, because obviously the railway is there and then the house is on the other side.
Mhm. And from there, beyond transport and stuff like that, what other specific problems that affect Stretford and Urmston? And how would you work as an MP to help to fix them, or at least raise them on a national level, as in problems specific to the area you're campaigning in?
With the Stretford, obviously we're only about 4 miles from central Manchester. So we're more fortunate than other parts of the borough, like Stretford, Urmston and Flixton and Partington. Now, one of the services that was cut years ago was a 252, which was from Partington to Ashton-on-Mersey. And when it hit the A56, it was a limited stop. They did extend the 255 that used to terminate in Urmston, but now goes to Partington. Terminated Flixton, now goes to Partington. But one of the problems we experience in winter is the Mersey floods and the Mile Road floods. So people, I think it was last February, we had floods, rain and snow. And it was a nightmare because people couldn't get that road was shut. And yet they've closed the service. We got rid of the service where it's alternative route. And also they're talking about redeveloping Carrington Moss. Now that's a single road. Are you familiar? No, where do you live, by the way?
I live in the Hertfordshire area. I have been
Right.
to Manchester, but I'm not sure necessarily in the area you're campaigning in, so I might be, very stupid on this.
It's a single. It's not dual carriageway. It's a single road each side. From Flixton to through Carrington to Partington. Yes, if there's temporary traffic lights or an accident on that road, yes, it can get quite busy. Also, HGVs go down there. Talking about point of relief road in, now Shell Chemicals used to be there, and I believe there is infrastructure from the company. And obviously there's roads within the company, and they were talking about utilising. But now they're talking about putting 4 roads on that. Just getting one implemented at the moment, but there's 4 possible roads they want to put in that area across the Moss, which is agricultural land grade 2. Well, also they want to put houses on there. It's struggling already. We're struggling with that area, and again, the transport system is bad. And obviously, if we have things like the Mersey flooding, the more you build and take away drainage, the worse the problems are going to be. So that is something to consider. They are talking as well about there's an old Timperley to Elam line that could possibly be reused and implement that. And obviously, we talk about getting out of our cars and using public transport. We've got to sort the public transport out first. Until you can, it costs, I mean, now, if you don't book your tickets, like about 3 years in advance, you're paying something stupid on the day. And I can't understand why people don't get the train. And until you can make it affordable for people, family of 4 to get in a car, as London is the same as what you would get on a train. That's got to be sorted out. I mean, with my sister and I, we took the train to Norwich, February. It was about the same time that we would take us in the car at the various stops and everything. But it cost us about the same and the same amount of time. And obviously, it wasn't bad because we could eat and go to the loo without stopping as well. So that did save us those times of having to stop on the journey. So, but it's got to be more affordable, and then people are going to use them.
Mm-hmm. And on that front also is like what has running in this year's local election in Gorse Hill, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, it could be me being stupid. But anyway, running in that local election, what did it help to teach you about such campaigns, and how have you adopted such tactics this time around in campaigning in this area?
Sorry, just say that again.
Essentially, what has running in this year's local election in Gorse Hill helped to teach you about such campaigns, and how have you adopted such tactics in terms of campaigning this time round?
Right. Well, obviously, I live in Gorse Hill. Although the candidate that was elected, I like her, and I think she's doing a good job. The only bugbear that I had that is herself and one of the other councillors we have live out the area. We've only got one that lives in the ward. And I think if you live in the ward, you see the problems day to day. So that was the only thing I've got against it, because like there's two councillors don't live in the ward now, as opposed to we had two, it did. That's why I stood. I did stand in this ward when it was Talbot Ward in 1999 as well. I've just, with this general election, I thought, I was asked to stand years ago with the Liberal Democrat. I was asked, they gave me a parliamentary role. I didn't even actually go to that meeting. I was doing first aid actually, and then they said, like, oh, could do with more people like you. And I actually had the pack on my cabinet for ages, and I just didn't, I had a young family, and I just didn't get down. So I thought, well, this is now, I think with the by-election and all, because it doesn't get swamped in a general election. So I thought I'm going to, at least I can say I've stood. And I know it's going to be a hard task, obviously, because it's relatively safe Labour seat, but of course this used to be a Conservative one in its former life when it was Stretford constituency with Winston Churchill. So you never know, things might change.
And what has it been like to campaign as an independent candidate in the area, as opposed to being on a major party ticket?
Well, obviously I haven't got the backup, and that the other parties have, because obviously during the by-election they call everybody out, all and sundry from all over. I mean, even in the council elections that was happening, which I took umbrage to, because they had about 4 canvassing around this area because it was a safe Labour seat, and they had more people canvassing in National Mersey, which she wanted to win, which she did do. They could afford to take ones from here. Obviously, in a general election, everybody's campaigning for their own area. So in a by-election, they can bring in people. I know people were coming in from Salford. But I think as well, canvassing and that has changed. One of the things they said, can you produce a leaflet? Well, financially, no, I couldn't produce a leaflet. And also get it out and time, get it delivered in that space of time that we had, just over 3 weeks from when the election was called. But as well, it reduces the carbon footprint as well. And I think we could use social media that we didn't have when I used to do a lot more campaigning. So you can do things on Facebook, because obviously I have a Facebook page. I can put things on there. I can put more stuff on there than I can a leaflet. I mean, we used to produce about, in a general election, about a leaflet a week. We had 4 leaflets going out during the time, and we could utilize out, certain areas and make more of the points. But unlike Facebook, I can put more photographs on, highlight things than you can on the leaflet. So, and people have found me. So that's not bad, but obviously independent and I'm doing it on my own.
Hmm. And the next thing I wanted to ask you, you touched on the fact that you were sort of like the Liberal Democrats were interested in having you as a candidate at one point. Why is it that you decided to run independently instead of being on a party ticket, like, for instance, the Liberal Democrats?
I went to a meeting only a few years ago, and it was actually a Northwest meeting. And they said, "Oh, I think it was talking about Brexit, and he said, "Oh, this is really good good turnout." And I had to look and say, "Oh, sorry, what do you mean this is a good turnout?" I said, "We used to have more than Flixton on the local election, and this is the Northwest, and this is the only people that you can actually muster to come to the meeting." And Chris Davis was there, the former MEP. Jane Brophy was MEP because she was local. She lived in Timperley. And I was just incredulous that they thought that was a good turnout. I could muster that many people myself as an independent, never mind, to come out and help me. And I thought, sorry, no. And obviously, during the last general election, one before it, Joe Swinson lost the seat. And that gets me when people keep going on about unelected prime ministers. We don't elect prime ministers. We elect an MP of a party, or not a party in my case. And the party, obviously, with more votes, goes to form an MP, a prime minister. But what happens if the party with the most votes loses its seats? What, we're going to turn around and ask for another general election? And do you know how much a general election costs?
Quite a few. I'm not quite sure. I think it's like I know it's a
About
lot of money.
About 140 million.
Oh, okay.
So can you imagine if if the leader lost the seat, what we're going to turn around and say, "Oh, we'll have another one like the week after"? No, we can't. That's about 70 million for returning officers. So when they keep going on, well, we need a general election. No, we don't. We don't elect prime ministers through general elections. We elect MPs, and the party with the most MPs has their leader go forward. And if they lost the seat, well, they just have to choose another one. Mm-hmm. It's as simple as that.
Mm-hmm. And why do you think that based on what you just said, why do you think there are so many calls, at least among national media and certain commentators, that to have a general election now, just beyond, is it just because simply Sunak is, so to speak, only elected by party members and not the public at large, so to speak, in terms of like his leadership of the party in general?
Probably because they don't always realise how much it costs, basically. I mean, because obviously I know how much it costs just for me to stand. I've had to pay my deposit. Fortunately, I had some posters from the Gorse Hill one that I had to alter a bit, but that's been done before. Years ago, I've seen posters change. So it costs money. And as well, where does the money come from? A lot of it is provided by the members. And at the moment, a lot of the members are trying to work out whether to feed themselves or put the heating on. Never mind donate to a political party, because we regularly get emails from different parties saying, "Oh, can you donate?" So it costs a lot of money. So I don't think I think it's the same with a lot of things like the NHS. Like I got hearing aid. I don't think I realised that my hearing aid costs within the region of £600. Now, I would never, ever, ever walk around with £600 in one pocket. Mm. I would separate it, and whatever lives from at home lives there. And I didn't realise that my hearing aid cost £600, and I didn't need it all the time. And I put it in my pocket, and I lost it. But I think that's a thing with the NHS. We need to sort of realise what we are actually getting, and how much it would, if we had to pay for it, how much it would cost us. And I don't think people realise the actual cost of a general election. Same with the referendum. We've had a referendum on various things. We've taken a vote, and we've one part, one either the for or against to one. And to have another referendum on certain things, again, that's going to cost money. And basically, we can't afford it.
And on that then is another question about being an independent candidate, is that what can you offer as an independent candidate that a major party candidate cannot?
I think because I'm independent, for the start, we don't have to toe any party lines. I mean, I've just, one of the candidates, I've asked for him to give me some information. Because I've for the last 16 years, I've run my own local magazine without any journalistic knowledge. In fact, sometimes I can't even spell, but that's because I've got ADHD and I tend to spell phonetically. And I do have problems with some words like dyslexia. Not a problem with that word, but people with dyslexia, obviously. And he had to get that passed by his party. I'm independent. I don't have to get anything passed by my party. I can stand for myself. I didn't have to have an election to be nominated by the party or its members. So I think you've got your own voice. You can say things. And obviously when the parties are sort of more united, they've got to go with the way the party's thinking. But if you're an independent, no, you don't have to do that. You can say exactly what you think. And the way things should be. So you've got your own voice, not the voice of the party in some cases.
Mm-hmm. And what has been, so far campaigning, what has been the reception to you as an independent candidate compared to, say, people who run for major parties? So how have people sort of taken to you, what have people felt about you as an independent candidate, rather, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, some comments like, are you mad? Yeah. Something, wow, they're brave and go for it. So yeah, or why wait? Why not wait till the general election? Well, that's 2 years down the line. Guys, a lot can change in 2 years. So I'll just finish doing the magazine as it is in its current format. We used to produce hard copies, now produce an online one. I just have access to more things, so I have to write more features now. So I'm ending that. I'm just at the process of finishing the last magazine off now. And so I was looking for a new direction anyway. So I thought, oh, this is weird. It's coinciding at exactly the same time. And like I say, things change. So, I thought I'd go for it now. And a lot of people know me. I do a lot within the community during COVID in 2020, because we couldn't have the Christmas fairs that we used to have. And I did a Christmas grotto at one of the public venues. So I built my own Santa sleigh. So I was outside at like 4 o'clock in the gloaming, with the circular saw, jigsaw, building the sleigh. And then we take it round the various areas. And then I got myself a ghost train. Because I got myself a ghost train. I made myself a ghost train. And I've done a lot of volunteering in the area, from riding for the disabled, WRBS. So I've always been a volunteer doing something all my life. And so a lot of people know me personally. And I also live in Stretford, and I've lived in more or less the same road all my life. Only a couple of times. I had about 6 months in Urmston when I first got married. So I'm known to the area. Some of the other ones are outside the area, not too far, but I think we should be more local.
Mm-hmm. And on that is, excuse me, is that do you think that's one major benefit to you in this by-election, is the fact that you are locally well known, and the fact that you've had stuff like the magazine and you doing stuff during COVID, as you mentioned? Do you think that's one thing that could sort of boost your profile and therefore your popularity when it comes to voting day?
I'm hoping so, yeah. I mean, even if it's just to get poll enough votes to not lose my deposit,
Hmm.
um, that's obviously a big issue. So yeah, I'm hoping. And I mean, last time I beat 2 Liberals and 1 Green in the Gorse Hill. Yeah, so I was quite, impressed with that. You know, the Liberals who I'd stood for. So yeah, so obviously it shows what the feelings were towards them. And I've been asked to stand for other parties in the past, and so quite kind of quite, Well, then again, so was Screaming Lord Such. He was asked to be stand for other parties, and he said, can I be the leader? No, well, go away, because I'm the leader of my own party. So, and he wasn't as daft as he made out. He was quite sane. I actually knew him. I've actually been on stage with him singing, but making a noise anyway.
Yeah, and on that as well is that given that the seat you're running in is a safe Labour one, as you mentioned earlier, and has been since the Blair years at least, how do you plan to win over such voters to your side?
Actually got quite a few already coming over. Believe it or not. There were a lot of people that voted Labour, and so they've actually said, yeah, they're going to give me some support, which I think's quite nice. Like, because I haven't. Yeah, I've had a few sort of say, yeah, they're going to come over and support me.
And why have they said that? Is it because they're dissatisfied with the current Labour Party as it is? Is it because they know you
Yeah,
better?
sorry for me. I think because they know that if I lose if I don't poll so many of the votes, I was to be honest about this, that obviously I could lose my deposit, and they wouldn't like to see me financially come unstuck because of that. And that, yes, we could risk not voting for Labour because they'll probably, get in anyway. But if obviously, they could. I said, well, wouldn't it be great if I could get all the ones thinking the same way, because then it could be quite interesting. But yeah, but as well, because obviously, there is a lot of bad feeling towards the Trafford Council as well, because we've got these cones that's been on the road since COVID, and we've had God knows how many consultations, and there was one last November, and we've not changed, and it was one of the main things in the May elections. Also, this CAS clean air zone, and it's cost somewhere in the region of 450,000 to get the sign to say under review. That's a lot of money on the street furniture, 150,000, but it was more than that because obviously they had all the signs prior to that and everything else about it. So they're wasting our money. And we've got terrible roads. We've just had some around here resurfaced. Absolutely appalling state of, one had a pothole within days or even that day being done. It's been redone again. And we actually got my sister broke a spring on her car. Yeah, my son broke one a week before. We didn't claim on us. We should have done. My sister claimed on hers, and it could pop the tyre. And the questions we were asked were, when did you buy the tyre? Was it a cheap tyre? How many miles have you driven on the tyre? So my sister replied back, oh, and have you got the receipt? So my sister replied back, When was the road last resurfaced? Did you use a high quality of tarmac? Have you got the receipt for it? And how many cars have driven over it? Because it's expensive. It's £400 if spring goes. And the roads are in a shocking state of repair. And of course, this is all being done by the council. And obviously one of the candidates is leader of the council.
Do you think then, in turn, that sort of level of sort of I'm not sure how to say it, sort of like dissatisfaction with the leader of that council, do you think that will come to sort of hurt them in the vote, regardless of whoever wins anyway?
Yeah, I think there is. The only problem is that I was talking to somebody who spoke Labour. This was in because obviously the boundaries are changing now because of Gorse Hill. Although part of Gorse Hill wasn't in Gorse Hill, it was in Longford, and it's now changing over. I'm getting that. And the actual said was, well, I'd vote for you if you were Labour. So I was the same person. But if I was standing as a Labour candidate, they vote for me because I'm not a Labour candidate. And that's sometimes the problem, is sometimes people just see the name on the voting paper and they're so inclined to vote the way they've always voted without actually having a look. And, there is there's some areas you could put anybody up regardless and people will vote for them just because they are standing for the party. So I think that is a problem in some areas, that people are not reading in depth of what the candidates are doing. I mean, thing as well is like with leaflets, very often. I delivered one last time and they just said, well, I'm not reading that and you can have that back. I didn't even bother to read it. And there could have been other voters in the house. I mean, I would never do that. If there's 4 of us in our house and they've got a choice. Well, they haven't in this election, but they can make their own minds up. But you can't do that. You can't, and then people say we haven't had a leaflet, but they found out that somebody else has picked it up, screwed it and put it in the recycling bin, hopefully, as opposed to the waste,
So why do you think that sort of like tribal loyalty is still very much a thing in the area that you're standing in, despite how, as you said, how badly the council is doing, which is, if I'm not mistaken, Labour run also? Why do you think that sort of tribal loyalty is still there, the sort of thing you talked about?
I think because we've had, obviously, and this comes as quite a big surprise to some people, because obviously as well, when you talk about getting in on a minority government as opposed to a majority government, which obviously when we had the old 2-party system, the Conservatives and the Liberals, or Whigs as they were beforehand, if you had 10 voters and 6 vote for one or 4 votes for the other, the person with the 6 votes gets in, they're getting them with the majority. Obviously, when you've got more candidates and it splits the vote, but it's getting in on the minority. And also trying to explain to sometimes when I was on the doorstep and saying, and I was actually told, well, it was all right until your party came along. And I went, oh, no, actually the Liberals were here before, the other party. No, they didn't know that. So they didn't even know any political history when their own party was formed. And I think what we need to do is change the voting system. Because during, oh gosh, which election was it? Could have been 79, could have been 83. Can't remember which one it is. The Liberals at that point polled a quarter of the votes in general election, but they didn't get a quarter of the seats. Now the Liberals could come second in every constituency in the country to either Labour or Conservative and wouldn't have won a seat. but the voting was there. The votes were there for them. The support was there. And I think that's where they've got to change. And one of the ways of doing it, because obviously PR can be a bit of a nightmare sometimes, but obviously the way that the not the last Conservative leader election, the one before that with the Liz Truss, where you went, the party members, and then you voted, and then the last, there was one that ended up, didn't get enough votes or whatever, or how many. Then you voted again. So obviously then you ended up with the two-horse race, which is a better system, because then everybody gets more of a choice, because I think that's a problem, is getting in a minority government when the majority of people have voted against whoever's elected.
What have you made of Kate Green's performance as an MP, the one who's currently outgoing? And what are the strengths and weaknesses that she had as an MP that you'll keep in mind if you were to be her successor?
I like Kate Green. And on the whole, yeah, she did a lot. And saw her doing things. She was around. She lived in the area. She was around. I saw Kate Green more times during the time that she'd been here than I ever saw Winston Churchill. So we saw, yeah, Kate a lot. And I know there was some comments where, yeah, she's always got picked out to the thing doing things, but was she doing any policies change? But sometimes, like, trying to get to do things on some occasions that I've known. I've got a friend whose son's got ADHD and on the autistic spectrum. Trying to get things on this can be a real hard problem. I know that I've got ADHD as well. I don't know, I was diagnosed when my daughter was, but we've got high functioning ADHD. But you've got to fight for every single thing, and especially when you're a parent and you're fighting, and it takes ages, and you're drained and you're exhausted. And it's like, if you've gone to the MP and then nothing's been done, they've not, I had enough trouble getting trying to get a pass for my daughter as well on the transport. And it's only when she started, because of a dyspraxia, she's got over flexibility of the joints. She just had 3 back operations. She's only she's not 29 till January. So she gets we got that from the doctors on the physical as opposed to the mental health. And I think that's the problem sometimes you find. And even when you've been to the MP and you think you're meant to be doing, it's the same with lawyers sometimes. I feel like lawyers are not doing the job that they're meant to be, and I've done a better job than they have. So I don't sometimes think that, sadly, they should be doing what they should be doing. But yeah, and I think it's quite fun to Kate Green's following, and obviously because Beverly Hughes was the Stretford and Urmston MP as well.
Mm-hmm. And on that front as well, is that if you were to lose this by-election, what do you plan for your political future? Do you plan to run in any more by-elections? Would you run hypothetically in the general election, as you hinted at earlier?
I don't know. I'd have to see what happens and how we do. I mean, like I said, I've been approached by other parties to stand for them. There was one as well I considered. And I had a Zoom meeting with them, and I wasn't that impressed, sadly. And it was a case of like, yeah, you get told where we want you to stand. I said, oh, no, I'll stand, I won't stand like locally. I mean, obviously, if you've got more than one, I mean, obviously, with the Labour election, there was a very another good candidate that I have a lot of respect for. Unfortunately, she lost. So it's always like somebody else on the major parties, there's more than one candidate. So I don't know. I have to see what happens. And I mean, obviously the local election, and that's they're redoing all the boundaries and all the ward. So I hope that'll change. So I don't know yet.
Hmm. And the penultimate question I wanted to ask you, and this is the title of the show, and it's why I ask all my guests, is what would your ideal world be?
Sorry.
What would your ideal world be? That's the name of the show, and that's why I ask all the guests who come on here. So,
Well, my idea world, we were talking about this the other day. Obviously with the World Cup and like football, and at the end of the day, it's 22 men and women these days kicking a piece of leather around. And I think obviously because there was a bit of obviously because Wales and England, although they were different countries, but obviously they're in the same league. In our national game, and I think it just needs more cooperation between parties. I mean, I would say when it was imitating Harold Wilson, but it wasn't. They never said it. I think I said this at the Blackpool conference, and I did because that was when the SDP and the Liberals majority decided to form the alliance. Some hadn't, and David Elson was asked because he said he'd still talk to them, and then he goes, "Would you talk to Margaret Thatcher?" And he goes, "Yeah, if she'd listen." And I said, "Yeah, we should be talking to the other members of the SPP because we've got similar policies. I've got similar policies to the other parties, the other candidates. I'll admit it. We've got differences as well. But I think there's too much heckling going on, fighting, especially now when it's televised. It doesn't always look good. But I think, yeah, we should be talking to one another, a bit more cooperation. And I think it's about time we put the great back into Britain. And that is what I said, back in 80s, whatever, 3, 4. And I think that's what we need, we need to do, is more cooperation and between us, and I think we need some more education to other cultures. One of the things when something happens, I was interviewing the neighbours, and it was about comment about Muslim lady, and like she said, it was a bit weird to shave the baby's heads. I would shave them after they're born, to get rid of all the gunk and everything like that. That's the only time they do it. But the way she said it, it sounded as if she was weird and she was, going around with the razor with the baby's head. And I think that's the problem. We need to sort of talk more to other cultures and get together and, realise it's like Joe Cox said, there's more that unites than divides us. And I think that's what we need to concentrate on.
And thank you for coming on today. And if people wanted to find out more about you and your campaign, where can they find out more information about you?
I have a Facebook page, which is Hazel Gibb, Stretford and Urmston. So I'm on there, including my weird photographs of me. I have an alternative lifestyle as a farmer, which that needs sorting out. Our farming industry needs sorting out big time.
Yeah. Sure. Thank you for coming on and have a great rest of your day.
Hazel.
Thank you. Thanks for watching. If you like that and want to see more, please like and subscribe, as well as share. For longer episodes of the show with exclusive content, check out the audio versions of these podcasts, which are linked in the description below. If you would like to recommend guests, as well as get some other exclusive perks related to the show, please consider subscribing to both my Patreon and or subscribe to Scarlet accounts, as linked in the description below as well. And I hope to see you next time. Have a good day.